Hello, everybody. I'm just going to give you a moment to arrive. Hopefully, some of you will be here live. Happy Friday. Happy 11/11. Hello. Welcome. My name is Dr. Leah Taylor, and I'm here in my home office with my happy sloth, who reminds me and all of the people that I work with to slow down and enjoy the pleasure in life, which is what we're going to be talking about today. But before I get started, as I'm kind of waiting for people to arrive, I just also want to acknowledge that it is 11:11 and it's close to 11 a.m. And one practice that I have at 11:11 is to notice my thoughts at that time. I feel like 11:11 is an opportunity where we can really be conscious of what we're thinking. And so I just wanted to share a little practice that I do whenever I notice the clock at 11:11, which is going to happen probably while I'm talking about pleasure. And that is to bring conscious attention to whatever it is that I want to bring to my life. So the phrase that I say pretty often actually came from a book by Gay Hendricks called The Big Leap, and where he talks about upper limits and how we limit ourselves and what we can experience with our thoughts and our beliefs. And so I use 11:11 as an opportunity to kind of break through that. And so the phrase that I say that actually came from him is that I expand in abundant success and love every day, and I inspire others to do the same. So I want to offer that to you if that's something that resonates with you, and as a way to just kind of notice your thoughts at 11:11. So again, I just wanted to acknowledge this day. Also, it's Veterans Day today, which, I certainly appreciate all of the sacrifices that our military has been through to allow us and afford us the freedom that we have. And also, I want to expand our ways of thinking about freedom in that we can offer freedom to ourselves every single day. And certainly experiencing and feeling pleasure is a way to do that. So that's our topic for today. And this actually came about by a post that I made. I was at a Les Claypool show. Well, it was Bastard Jazz. And it was in Petaluma. And for any of you who don't know, Bastard Jazz is kind of this it's all improv. So it's Les Claypool, it's Skerrick, it's Mike Dillon, and Stanton Moore as the drummer. And it's all improv. And I love Les Claypool. He is one of my favorite artists. And I've loved him since I was in middle school with Primus. I used to be really into kind of more grunge rock, which I still love. But so I discovered Primus back then, loved him then saw him in kind of different iterations like the Frog Brigade, and just loved him so much, and the amount of pleasure that he brings to my body when I see him live. And I really feel like a lot of that is about the movement in my hips, because, he plays bass, which really, for me, and maybe you've noticed this too, when you experience the bass live, it kind of makes your hips move, right? And so while pleasure does not always have to be about sexual pleasure, and that's what I want to talk about today too, is expanding our view in what pleasure means to us and how we think about pleasure. But this is where our pleasure in our body resides, is in our hips. And we hold so much trauma and so much holding in our hips that when we are able to free them and allow them to move in a way that feels really good, we can actively send pleasure throughout our whole body. So being at a Les Claypool show to me is so pleasurable and so enjoyable, and I love it so much. So I posted a short clip of a video that I took from the Bastard Jazz show, which was in Petaluma in May. And luckily there was this woman that was right in front of me that was feeling at least as much pleasure as I was. So she was jamming out, and she was a little bit shorter than me. So it was so lovely to be able to dance with her right in front of me. So I posted that clip, and I talked about how pleasure is the antidote to stress. And I talked about how when we experience pleasure, this cacophony of feel-good hormones is released in our body, which the way that kind of like our mind-body connection works and our physiology is just designed is that when we are experiencing pleasure, that turns off the stress response, which is what releases cortisol and adrenaline and all the other things that in a short period of time are really good for us because they help us to, fight the fight or flee the fight or do whatever we need to like push through the stress. But in the long term, it's not good for us. So the best way to be able to turn that off is to start to release other neurochemicals into our body. And pleasure is certainly one of the best ways to be able to do that. So I posted that clip. I don't know what viral would be considered, but for me, it has gotten more hits than any other video that I've done. It's gotten like 12,000 views, and I consistently get likes from it, even today, which is like in November. I posted that in May or June or sometime this summer. So obviously it resonates with people. And so I really wanted to talk about this because it's enough to know that pleasure is good for us, but it's also really important to talk about the conversation that most of us do not allow ourselves to feel pleasure in a way that is healthy, right? So especially for women, like what I was taught when I was young, and I am from the South, I'm from North Carolina, like I was raised to be a good girl, to be ladylike, and to never express pleasure in front of anybody else unless I'm in the bedroom with like my husband, right? So not even had a call come through. Let's see. Okay. Sorry, I was like going a little crazy there. My phone was trying to catch up. So the beliefs that I was taught, and by being called a slut or a whore if I was dating multiple people, like not just through that, but through society, through, mirroring from adults when I was younger that this is okay here, this is not okay here, this is not okay here. Like we absorb so much, not just from the things that people say, but also how we see other people living their lives. And unfortunately, there are not enough people who are living their lives fully turned on. And when I say turned on, I mean like turned on by life, like in your pleasure, fully embodied, leading from that place. For me, live music was really, and I talked about this in my post, live music for me was what allowed me to find that pleasure in a way that was like, wow, I cannot ignore this anymore. And outside of the bedroom, like live music is an experience where it is extremely intimate, but it is also in a very safe container because we are able to experience these feelings, this pleasure, this joy, this intimacy from another in a way that is non-threatening because we're not necessarily touching somebody. Yes, of course, you'll see the couples that are like totally making out on the dance floor. And that is one thing. But for most people, and me especially, like for me, live music is such an individual experience in myself while I'm surrounded by so many other people. And while I found pleasure in live music, the only way that I could allow myself to actually have that, especially with people around me, was if I was intoxicated. So that was like my process, my journey, because when I was younger, I was taught that pleasure is not okay to feel unless you are doing it for somebody else or feeling it for somebody else as a woman, feeling it for your husband. Like most of the time, by the way, it's 11/11, so let's just acknowledge that. I expand in abundance, success, and love every day, and I inspire others to do the same. So most of the time, we are wronged for feeling pleasure for ourselves as women. It is not okay to do that. But as women, we are the creators of life. We are the creators of life. And when we are turned on, when we are living life from that place, so much abundance can happen. So much beauty can happen. And, when I talk about live music too, it's the women the muses, whether that's the feminine from the woman or the feminine from the man, that are like showing up in their full-bodied, pleasured way, that are like helping to carry that energy, to reciprocate that energy. So I want to read something to you from my dissertation that I wrote about live music and how it relates to well-being. And luckily I was able to use a very creative process. And the way that I opened my dissertation was with an excerpt from a Phish show that I saw. I think it was in like 2014 or something. So I'm just going to read this to you. Okay, so there's a little bit more before this, but for the 3 hours the band was on stage, I did not care. All that mattered to me, well, and let me actually go a little bit before this. So, okay, a Phish show is not a tidy experience, kind of like life, I have come to realize. This night was no exception. The humidity was high, the heat was on, this was at Merriweather in the summer, and the floor was jam-packed with bodies. For the 3 hours the band was on stage, I did not care. All that mattered to me was the sensation I felt in the moment. Sometimes this sensation felt so close to an orgasmic experience, I almost thought I should not be experiencing it in public. But that was my proper, shameful voice speaking. I immediately pushed this to the side and went back to fully experiencing the sensation of being moved, made love to by the music. In instances like this, which rarely happens for the entire 3-hour show, this was one of the lucky times, I let it all hang out. There was no separation between the band and myself, no separation between band members. We were all souls intertwined intimately, lusciously, feeling up against one another with sound and sensation. It was pure ecstasy. My senses were heightened, my whole being pulsed, and my body moved inherently, swayed, rocked, and caressed by the back and forth of the instruments. How many of you have experienced that before in your life? Please let me know. If you're a live music fan, I hope that experience has at least happened to you once in your life, if not multiple, many, many times. Because for me, that is the beauty of being in that contained place that is non-threatening, where I get to allow that pleasure and that joy and that bliss to pulsate through my whole body and being. And, that is one of the reasons that I created Embodied Groove, because I started noticing people noticing me being fully turned on by the music and how inspired they were by that. And I really wanted to be able to create a movement class and experience that allowed people to open up their energy centers, to free their hips, to free their heart, to free all of this holding, all of this conditioning that we have that tells us that we shouldn't be feeling that in public, that we shouldn't be feeling that in general, that we have to, one of the things that I noticed when I was doing my research on live music and I was looking at, well-being, is that pleasure was hardly ever talked about. It wasn't even a subject that academics were even touching on, because it's not okay to talk about. It was so interesting to me how it was left out of all of the literature, of all of the research, because it's not something that we're supposed to talk about or something that we're supposed to experience in life. And, there's been a large journey and kind of progression from really looking at what's wrong with people, what's, all of the psychosis, the neurosis, all of the disorders, into let's actually pay attention to what is going right with people. How do people experience health in their life? How do they experience wellness in their life? And let's focus on that and what's happening there so that we can create more of that, not so that we can demonize what's going wrong with people and look at that so that we can classify it as disordered, but let's look at what's actually going right. And that was part of my intention of doing my research on live music, because live music is such an inherently pleasurable and enjoyable experience that people go back to and back to and back to and back to. Obviously, there's something that they're gaining from it. And, the 8 people that I interviewed for my research, they all used it for like self-care because they kept going back to it. And so I feel like if there's something that people are already doing, that they are gaining benefit, that has the capacity to be able to reach thousands of people at one time in a way that is making meaning in their life, that's something really important to look at, because we don't have to force anybody to get there. It's extremely low cost as far as therapeutic wise, and it has so many different benefits, not only helping people to feel good inside of themselves, but also connecting them to other people while they are feeling good inside of themselves. So there's just so many things that I see that are beneficial in that. And, I knew that in my own life. I saw that in my friends' lives, but I really wanted to be able to break it down, to present it to the academic community, to present it to a larger community, to say, hey, we should really be paying attention to this. And the other thing about that is that, dance, music, movement has been used since the beginning of time for ritual, for healing, for community building, for bringing people together. And, we can't forget that. It's like modern medicine has made us feel like, oh, well, the only way that we can feel better is to take a pill for something. But that's just a Band-Aid. That's not actually creating the healing that we need in this life. So that's just kind of my thoughts about live music and how important it is for our lives, for the world in general. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. Let's see. I think it's just really important that we expand our view of what pleasure looks like in our life, begin to notice the beliefs that we have about feeling and experiencing pleasure, especially around other people, and working through that, healing and releasing those beliefs, because they're not helpful. They're not ours. They were given to us by other people who, probably unwillingly are just trying to keep us small, or just trying to keep us unturned on, because a turned on, especially woman, can be so powerful. And as we know from history and things that are happening right now in our lives, that is threatening to the status quo. But that is how we liberate ourselves. And that is how we liberate others, because when we can show up full-bodied in our pleasure, we give other people the permission to do the same. And that is so important. So thoughts, comments, I'd love to hear anything that you have to say about this. I'd love for this to be like a conversation. I've said a lot about what I want to say. Oh, I also want to say, so I have the Groove Therapy podcast that I do with Tara Lee Weathers that talks about really like the intersection between health and wellness and live music. And there is an episode with Jay Blakesberg, who is a very well-known photographer, especially in the jam band scene. He started photographing the Grateful Dead in his 20s, and he does a lot of photography for bands. But not only that, he also loves to capture the crowd experience. And so he has this one book, it's called Hippie Chick, that are focused on the females of the scene. And his episode is called Turned On with Jay Blakesberg. It's episode 12 of the Groove Therapy podcast, because that's what he looks for. He looks for people that are turned on, because he knows that is going to be the photograph that shows that just like essence and radiance of a person. It does not matter what you look like. When you are turned on, you are shining. And so that's what he looks for in the crowd. And we talk a little bit about that through our interview. So if you love Jay or you want to hear more about that, I encourage you to listen to that episode. And any questions, comments before I say goodbye to you for now? I appreciate you being here and spending some time with me today, whether you're listening live or you are listening to the replay. I just want to say, however you can begin to experience pleasure in your life in a larger way, in a contained way, in a safe way, because that's how your body's really going to be able to receive it when you feel safe enough to be able to feel it inside. But the more and more you feel it inside, the easier it's going to be to connect with that. And the more that your body will begin to receive it as just normal, because it feels scary in the beginning if you're not used to it and you've been shamed for it, or you have all of these beliefs around it. But once you can feel it in a safe way and have that experience over and over and over and over again, then you can know that it's okay to have it. It's like working through those unconscious beliefs that we hold in our body. And moving your hips is all right. Had another call come through. Next time I'll silence my notifications. If you are interested in experiencing that through my work with Embodied Groove, I would love to have you join either live or virtually. Embodied Groove is my live music movement class that I have created to really give people a safe container to be able to experience pleasure in their bodies in a safe and fun way. And I have some classes that are going live through the end of the year. Next Sunday, 11/20, the following Sunday right after Thanksgiving, 11/27, December 4th, so that's like 3 Sundays in a row. Then we skip a week and we come back on my birthday, which is December 18th, which I'm super excited about dancing with everybody for my birthday. If you'd like more information on that, you can find out in my bio. There's a direct link to those classes. It's $15 for a drop-in online, a sliding scale 15 to 25. If you do it in person, it's in San Rafael at a Body Vibe studio. So I'd love for you to join for that. And thank you for being here with me today. If you have something that you'd love to add to this conversation, I'd love to hear it. Let's keep this going. Let's keep really encouraging ourselves and everybody else to find that turn on within themselves, to find that pleasure, so that not only can it be an antidote to stress, but also a way to liberate ourselves and our communities and our bodies and beings. So thank you so much, and experience some pleasure today. I'm going to see some live music tonight, which I'm really excited about with a girlfriend. So I love you so much. Thank you for being here. Happy 11/11. I'll see you next Friday. Bye.